Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Quote Unquote with KK. I want to make a small announcement. We have lost our industry doyen, Ratan Tata, who I happened to start working with in 1998 as part of the Prime Minister's Task Force in Food and Agri Reform. We've talked about it also in some of our previous episodes of our podcast in previous seasons on food and agri reforms and the work we have done. But with an heavy heart, I would say my relationship with him started in 1998. I've been on and off in touch with him and also gained a lot of insights and connects both outside the Tata Group and within the Tata Group. May his soul rest in peace, and it's a big loss for the industry. Now, let's come back to our podcast today. We've been talking about our India Healthcare Life Sciences Investment Manifesto in this season, and we've been bringing in different bet and topics around the 40 bets that we have taken. And in this podcast, we're going to be talking about beauty with brains. Can beauty be smarter? You see, one of the industry veterans once told me that India is a $3 consumer market in spite of a very large consumer base. And we've been talking about, the cross-domain investments, whether it is with wellness industry, whether it's with the beauty industry. And today we have picked up the theme on beauty and wellness, how they are converging, and how do we see a bigger headroom for growth as well. And let me just roll back in terms of some of the bet that we have tried to capture where we see the beauty and the wellness industry converging. So these include women, fertility and menopausal hormone boosting lifestyle solutions, smart tattoos, nail enamels, earrings, and non-invasive diagnostic products and services, ethical check on health wellness influencers, including the AI generated ones which are now emerging on our social media, biomaterials for health, wellness, and beauty, new healthcare packaging norms and material, immersive sexual health, wellness products and services, personalized skin nutraceuticals, nutri-cosmetic, personalized digital biochemistry tech for consumer products, and lastly, sleep biology. Now, these are many of the product that areas that we see headroom and they converge with the beauty and fashion industry. But if we were to just look at it from the tech convergence as well, particularly AI, AR, and VR, I think the headroom would be much more bigger. Just to set the context in terms of the size, you see, currently the global beauty industry is about $450 billion, and the wellness industry is about $1.5 trillion. Just to give you from a size point of view, if the beauty industry were to be a country, it would be ranked 38 in the world, and the wellness industry would be ranked about 18th in the world. But if we were to merge both these industries as we see the trends of converging, it will be around 11th or 12th behind Russia and Mexico, almost $2 trillion industry. Now, if we were to also bring in tech, AI, AR, VR, which we are seeing as emerging, I think it could be amongst the top 5 country in the world. And that's why the context of beauty with brains, can beauty be smarter? Let me just bring up an interesting personality who's been going to be talking about it because she herself happens to be entrepreneur. I would say 2 times an entrepreneur and comes with beauty and brains to lead a unicorn in the beauty space. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Naiyya Saggi, who is an entrepreneur and runs 2 businesses. One is BabyChakra and second is Good Glam Group, which I would say for short, the 3Gs. As customary, we will fact check on Naiyya's chat GPT profile, which reads as follows, and then Naiyya can counter it whether it is true or false, just to do the fact checking from the horse's mouth. Naiyya is a notable entrepreneur and a founder of BabyChakra, a platform dedicated to providing products and services for pregnancy and parenting in India. She is also the co-founder of the Good Glam Group, a digital-first beauty and personal care conglomerate. So she has been at that cutting edge here. After graduating from Harvard Business School, she returned to India and launched BabyChakra in 2015. In 2021, she co-founded the 3Gs, and the company quickly rose to prominence and entered the unicorn club within months. That's a big fast track record, I would say. She's become a mother once again, and her BabyChakra experience would also make her life easier, I would say. And congratulations for the good motherhood once again to you, Naiyya, and welcome
Thanks.
to our podcast show.
Thanks, KK. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this conversation with you.
Lovely. I would like to start the podcast with the big debate about beauty. And I want to start that with, what do you believe is beauty?
Okay, so you put me on the spot there, didn't you? No, so what do I believe is beauty? I mean, that's an interesting thought because I think beauty has a lot of narratives and it's extremely, first of all, there's a localized narrative of beauty. There's also a global narrative of beauty. There is a mental, emotional, spiritual narrative of beauty. There's a physical, aesthetic narrative of beauty. So I think the one thing that I would just say beauty is that it actually has many narratives, it has many interpretations, and there is actually no right one. And what all of us actually are trying to do, not just at the Good Glam Group, but I think many of the new age companies are trying to build products and build a vision and contribute to that vision that we each have for our own narrative of beauty and really build out personalized narratives and support those.
So, what is your narrative of beauty then? Let me come to that. How do you believe what the Good Glam Group is going to do about beauty and taking beauty to the next level in India and globally, perhaps?
KK, our narrative of beauty kind of sort of stems also from our journey, right? Because and if I look at it inside out from the group as well as outside in, from like we co-create a lot with our customers and consumers, and that's really where the narratives kind of come together. But I think the first place inside out is that we've had a very rich history, of course, starting off with a very traditional sort of narrative of beauty, which is color cosmetics. That was the My Glam origin, which was founded by my co-founder Darpan. And I think that origin of itself basically talks a little bit about like the aesthetic and also the ability for you to use products that make you feel the best version of yourself, right? Now, when you layer it on to, where we sort of also grew with the Good Glam Group, with BabyChakra coming in, with PopXO coming in, with acquisition of content and creator assets, with multiple other brands coming in as well, we actually were then able to look at a more holistic, sort of almost interpretation of beauty, which was that what are people thinking about? What are people talking about? What do communities value when it comes to beauty? And then building that narrative, that chatter, and those insights back into creating our products. So I think that has been the evolution of our interpretation of beauty. It's a very philosophical discussion. I can go into it in detail.
Oh, yeah,
But I
that's
think
why I said it's the big debate.
it's a big debate. But I think the larger point is that it's a lot, with the power of digital, with the power of content, with the power of creators, with the power of intelligence at scale and insights at scale that we can harness, where, I mean, the aspiration is to create extremely personalized, hyper personalized interpretations of beauty and also hyper personalized interpretations and insights from inspiration on beauty that people are seeking. So I
I'm
think
going to
that's the forward.
I'm going to touch upon the hyper personalization because that's the whole thing about beauty with brains at one level. But I want to just talk a little bit on the same subject here. You see, from ages, I would say since the start of mankind, history has shown, different depiction of beauty, even in the caves and then in Egyptian pharaohs. And, we did a podcast just recently on longevity and age reversal. I wanted to understand, can one gain eternal beauty? Since history has been talking about beauty, can one, because that's where the health and wellness and
We,
science will come
we
in.
haven't been able to bottle the fountain of youth. Let me put it this way, KK. If we did, we would have been on a very different trajectory there. But I again actually coming back to that, I think where we are as an industry is really interesting. It's a nice inflection point because I think first of all, beauty has now become thanks to social media, right? While I talk about hyper personalization, there is also a globalization of beauty and beauty standards, which is super interesting, right? So earlier, what used to happen is that a Bollywood actress, for instance, would be the beauty idol. I'm talking about the aesthetic, the physical
Correct.
manifestation of beauty, right? That would be your sort of your inspiration for, let's say, a woman in, in Mumbai or in Kanpur, right? But now that same woman is actually looking at Kylie Jenner and looking at Kim Kardashian and forming her beauty choices, right? Because the aspiration is very different. I mean, today the world, I mean, social media has made the world a very global platform for inspiration and aspiration setting. And beauty, of course, is one of the forerunners in that space. I think the second interesting piece is the percolation of beauty, right? Earlier, beauty used to be sort of the fiefdom, if you will, or discovery of beauty would start when you were just in that little bit of that pre-marriage stage, right? So if you were 25, 26, shadi hone ka time tha, you would start discovering beauty, and then you'd get into kajal and lipstick, which was the mainstay. But now you're sort of seeing patterns where you're seeing 13, 14, 15-year olds, tweens, teens really looking at beauty from a very different lens and saying it's a self form of self expression. not necessarily aesthetics, but form of self-expression, which manifests itself in, really crazy shades of lipsticks and eyeshadows and nail polishes and hair color. Neon eyeshadows, for instance,
Oh
are really
yeah.
the now, right? Glow in the dark.
Goths and
Yeah, and then glow in the dark nail paints, right? So, and then of course you have the older, more mature generation that's looking at not a youthful look, but they're looking at a look that basically makes them feel that it's the best version of themselves, right? That they look dignified and graceful. So, you have all these interpretations. And by the way, not to forget that even now men have a very strong interpretation and a narrative in beauty, right? So for the first time in history, we're seeing men participate in scale at scale, and not just with like grooming products, but with beauty products, right? So people are actually buying concealers, they're buying foundations, they're buying lip balms, they're buying, very subtle blushes, is what we've also noticed. They're of course plucking their eyebrows. So there's a lot of the waxing. There's a lot of, I think, now chatter in men around beauty as well. So I think it's a very interesting. We're at an inflection point where you're sort of seeing new cohorts which never existed before adopting beauty, and new cohorts actually interpreting beauty. I could be in Kanpur, but I want to look like a Kim Kardashian. I think that's really interesting.
so, as I see, one is globalization, which means Kanpur wali Kim Kardashian banna hai. Then the metrosexuality. Men also want to adopt beauty and enhance their looks and look glamorous. And the third trend that you said is the younger ones starting very early
Like an
on,
unlock of cohort,
and
unlock of new cohort.
adoption is coming in very quickly. You see, I come from a healthcare industry, although I did little work in very early part of my career in the cosmetic industry. But what we find is the cosmetic surgery, which is a direct influencer to the beauty industry, generally starts a lot to do with women in the teens, late teens, when they are kind of in the college or exiting college and their first job, where a lot of enhancement happens, unless there is some congenital defect which needs, a medical or surgical correction. And it's also growing a lot. And then what we are also seeing is a lot, especially post COVID, a lot of change happening in the mix of, as you are saying, globally because of social media and all, but also a lot of mix in terms of the direction and the type of what you called as different cohorts seeking very different aspirational and functional products and services to enhance their look, beauty, their ego, or whatever are their prime drivers to consume such products and services. How do you see this trend, as we talked about, of beauty getting hyper personalized and much more smarter and catering to the market of one, I would say?
So I think first of all on the cosmetic surgery and the aesthetic corrections, if you will, and that sort of industry, I mean that's definitely on the rise, right? And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's with a lot sort of less operative procedures. And also they start with a little bit of the non-invasive ones where you go to a derma clinic and you get your charcoal facials and things like that. Then you go on to more invasive ones which are subtly invasive, which are like your Botox and your different sort of touch-ups, etc., your micro needling, and then onto of course like full blown like rhinoplasties and facelifts, etc., right?
Right.
Tummy tucks, the works. In fact, so much so, I have the privilege of having of course both worked in health and wellness as well as beauty, and of course in baby care and mom care and beauty. And when you talk to gynecologists, they'll tell you today, especially in let's say one of these larger sort of more maternity oriented hospitals, that a mom will come in for her c-section, for her birth process, and she will say in the process, because you're anyways doing an operation, please do a tummy tuck also,
Yeah.
right? The rise of these aesthetic procedures, and of course, I'm talking about a certain segment, not it's not, but
Yeah.
the rise of this sort of these aesthetic procedures, right? Coupled with, I mean, these are all like non-elective surgeries.
They are.
I mean, so these are all elective surgeries, right? So I mean, like, it's a crazy market, and I mean, we grew up in a paradigm where even just doing braces was a very big aesthetic process, right? So
Right.
I think it's a really interesting market. But I think the other piece that you talk about, the whole sort of hyper personalization, right? I think that's really where data and device and sort of generative AI really comes into play. Because for instance, on the Good Glam app, My Glam app, right, we actually have a skin analyzer. So a lot of times, what ends up happening is that, of course, if you go to a shop or you go to a shop and shop, right, the beauty assistant, right, will analyze your skin type and she will recommend the right colors for you, the right lip shades, the right products to use for open pores or whatever your problem statement might be. But how do you replicate that at scale virtually? So what we have done is we actually have a tool which basically takes a snapshot of your skin and then gives you an analysis, which is extremely hyper personalized to you, and then recommends the right set of care products, but equally the right set of shades that may suit your skin tone best. Right. So I think there is that hyper personalization we're already seeing play out. And by the way, while we do it really well, we're not the only one to do it. There are other tools and other platforms that do it at scale. So it's become this mainstream, right? In some sense. The other piece we're seeing a lot of hyper personalization is also in co creation. So we are not doing it today, but there are other brands in the market that are doing questionnaires or trying to understand or doing a quick sort of chat with a virtual dermatologist or a virtual esthetician, and really figuring out the right sort of mix of formulation, which, like, if your skin is of the dry type, then hyaluronic acid, like what composition does that need to form of your formulation, and then making a personalized either shampoo or lotion or face cream or eye cream or whatever your problem statement might be for you. Now, this is extremely personalized if you really think about it, right? There's a third category, by the way, which I've seen in kits in the US, which I forget the name of, but it's basically like a 3D printing model which you can make it, which you can have,
Mm.
and you actually put in different sort of formula. So for instance, and it kind of takes sort of feedback from, your in the room that you're in. It'll take feedback in terms of humidity levels, the climatic conditions inside and outside, as well as some assessment of your current skin type, and then say, please add XYZ formula, and it'll make it fresh in your home, a formulation that you can use that particular night. Right. And then if you're traveling, you take the little thing, that little bundle with you, the little sort of almost like the 3D printing machine or whatever, the formulation machine with you, the mixer, and it makes another bundle for you if you're traveling to Africa, let's say, or you're traveling to India, or you're traveling, like, to another state. So I think there's a lot of personalization that's happening as we speak, and a lot more to come as well.
That's a great start. And I'm going to now move a little bit more towards the tech side, the smarter things that are coming or emerging as well. You see, we invested into nutrigenomics company, which we exited. It's been bought over by Roche
Mm.
Nutraceuticals. And one of the things that the bigger players globally want to do is, merge with the diagnosis or a kit with the mainstream wellness product. I guess the same trend is going on in the beauty industry. Maybe you are just doing it with an app. I do not know how scientifically validated it is about the skin type and all, but I can conclude, there are, India has got, and the reason I'm bringing this thing up is the size and scale and where India can emerge as a leader in the beauty and cosmetic industry as well. The big white spaces for our entrepreneurs and investors to really think about is that there is a lot of convergence we see, which could be just taking a skin swab and it could give you a color coding to say your skin is oily, or and these are reagent based test swabs and all. I mean, COVID has taught a lot. In a few minutes you know whether you got COVID or not. Now that same thing is now getting consumerized in different spheres of health, wellness, and obviously now in the beauty industry. So that somewhere we see the convergence of what we have learned from the wellness industry could make things much more hyper personalized and it is validated because it's clinically trial tested and stuff like that. How soon or how late do you think investments and entrepreneurs are going to pick up onto these sort of trends, which will give consumers a lot of confidence and also give better beauty outcomes clinically and scientifically?
So I think it's already happening in some sense, KK. So I mean, I'm not saying it's happening with the level of hyper personalization that is required of it. And we can talk, of course, about the a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we will unpack in this conversation on that front. But for instance, if you look at the mainstreaming of skin serum foundation,
Yeah.
which is one of the hottest launches, right? Because people want the pigmentation and the coverage payoffs of foundation, but they also want the skincare benefits of a serum, right? So that's one of our hottest sellers, by the way, in the MyGlam product range, right? So that's one example of where skincare and wellness, in some sense, and beauty have converged, right? If you look at this whole trend of aromatherapy and
Hmm.
how it lends itself well to basic things like lip balms and blushes and skin creams, right? When you go to sleep at night, a lavender cream, infused cream, because then that gives you a better night's sleep. So people are actually leveraging on the olfactory to ensure that you get a lot more mindful, restful sleep, which we all know then over time, of course, contributes to a better overall outcome, from multiple angles.
That's where the sleep biology, it's a
The
big
sleep
space that's
correct.
opening up.
Correct. There are foot creams being launched which are infused with magnesium, right? Which help you sort of deal with the chafing and the roughness on your feet, but also the magnesium helps you sleep
Dilates
better.
the veins and arteries of the legs.
Correct. Right. So I mean, it's all of these. So I mean, I think it's already happening. The juxtaposition of wellness, beauty, and well-being and care is already there. It's already happening. I think there's a lot of future forward pieces that can also happen now. And I think one interesting leap the beauty industry is taking, because so far, and I want to just kind of take a step back, right, KK, because when we started off building our companies out, right, just the very act of even getting a contract manufacturer and figuring out a basic formulation was a very big mammoth task, right? Because it was
Yeah.
completely new. But now that is table stakes. Everybody goes to the same contract manufacturers. Everybody goes with the same, like the contract manufacturer will typically have their own NPD lab, which will, or R&D lab, which will have a few stock formulations. You will rebrand it, थोड़ा सा ingredient story बनाकर, थोड़ा सा experience and fragrance का वो, mixing that around a little bit, and then the whole focus was on marketing and packaging. The future forward is certainly going to be on two things. One is the innovation on other ingredient story, which is a very different narrative than where we are playing today with the same like onion oil or whatever else, right? There's a lot of stuff that's happening now on prebiotics, which are
Mm.
great for
That's
skin
the nutraceutical part that
the nutrient
comes in.
but on the skin. So like now
Hmm.
it's like the skin is actually your largest organ. How are you feeding it well with the cosmetics and the creams that you're using,
Got it.
right? So in a way, but you're bang on, right? Skin care as a nutraceutical equivalent in some sense. And number two, I think there's also a future forward where there's a lot of innovation happening in having a complete tailored care protocol. What does that mean? It means that you're having glutathione, you're having a vitamin C supplement. At the same time, you're putting a certain vitamin C cream. So it's like a complete regime. That is, it's not just like right now, it's all in patchwork. Your Nutra companies, your ingestibles, and your topicals don't speak to each other. But I believe that there will be a paradigm where you get beauty in a box,
That's what
right?
I was alluding to, where you diagnose with a skin patch or any of your specimen, it gives you an indicator how healthy or how strong or whatever adjectives
Or
to
compromise.
define. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what is the right product for the typical condition at that point in time that the consumer can then pick it up off the shelf.
And maybe even off the shelf, maybe to your point, right? I mean, how, for instance, we've all like gravitated to having vitamin C, the ones that are extremely bubbly, right? The
Ah, effervescent. Yeah.
effervescent capsules, right? Or you're talking about the glutathione tablets or the gut health powders that we talk about, which is we know the whole idea is to have a better skin health outcome. But then I don't see any company today that is merging these two and creating a care protocol around it. Right. So, for instance, to your point, if someone diagnoses me for having dull skin, I'm buying glutathione from one X brand, let's say
Correct.
C2 or whatever else, and then I'm buying my cream from MyGlam or from L'Oreal or wherever else I am. No one has really created a product like a proposition where I'm telling you, let me give you the topicals and the ingestibles, which are tailored to your specific health need. So in the course of 30 days, you see a much higher payoff on your dullness than you normally would with like just trying to self-treat or self-diagnose yourself.
And that's where the clinical validated solutions come in with personalization. So that's kind of getting the wellness into the beauty industry or vice versa, as we may say. I wanted to bring a very another important topic here. You see, beauty has been there for ages, historical, but our Ayurveda has been also there. And I can also relate that around 2013, L'Oreal actually worked with Institute of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine to create a playbook on Indian materials, because that's where we also talked about the supply chain and ingredients part of it, using Indian Ayurveda and locally sourced materials into creating concoction for beauty for Indians by Indians. I'm not seeing that much of a trend, and if I go to Amazon, it's a lot of local mama papa guys putting their catalogs. Of course, there are a few who have now come up and they have some experience stores in some of the malls as well, Forest Essentials and blah blah blah. But it's not taken on as what an aspirational Kanpurwali would look at Kim Kardashian.
You're going to pick onto that this whole conversation, aren't you?
I
I
would.
knew you would.
But why not, be proud of what we look at locally? I mean, beauty is also local and very relatively very local as well.
So, and I absolutely, by the way, love this point, right? Because I do believe that we have a very, very, very rich tradition. Also, when done the right way with a very high efficacy and outcome. on Ayurveda. Interestingly enough, let me actually share this on a side note. I was speaking at the IS Officers Academy in Masuri, Labasna,
Mm-hmm.
for the foundation course. And there was a officer who was showing me around the campus. And the medical center has an allopathy department and has an Ayurveda department.
Yeah.
So basically, as an officer, if you fall unwell, you can actually choose either of the two practices to be admitted in, which is, I think, so progressive and so rooted also in tradition at the same time, right? I think was really commendable. But I think the two pieces to this, right? I was talking to a few folks in consumer recently, and I was like, why hasn't Ayurveda really taken off?
Yeah,
And
Vico used to be one of the biggest ads on Doordarshan,
yeah,
and Dabur and all those. I
yeah.
think they are all done, dusted.
I mean, I won't say they're done and dusted. I think they're relevant to a certain target audience. I don't think they're in the audience which is the avocado India today, right? So I think it's that relevant. So my question to this individual, and this individual actually, by the way, is the CEO of one of the largest like Ayurvedic mass market companies in India. Will not name him because it was a learning conversation we were having as peers. But my question was that why hasn't this taken off? Like, why don't we have a premium product except for like like a little bit, and Forest Essentials and all are amazing products, great brands, but they're not that large still, right? So I think the thought that he had, which was interesting, one was that pure play Ayurveda in its most efficacious and most pure form is not the most palatable to a sensorial or to an experiential payoff the way a lab produced product would be. And as Indians are very particular about ye chip chip nahi hona chahiye, right? Iska smell kitna kharab, like that entire piece, right? So you can't really, like if you think about the Kerala Kottayam Ayurveda
Oh,
Chala, the products there. No, no, but exactly, like that is like pure Ayurveda, right?
correct.
So I think that is one piece, right? Ayurveda does not lend itself well to like the sensibilities, either as either aesthetic or olfactory or experiential that we as audiences are now kind of used to today. The second is that it seems like no one is willing to pay a bit of a premium for an Ayurvedic, for a specifically Ayurvedic product. It all depends on the brand. So, for instance, people are willing to pay a premium for Forest Essentials because the brand is
Or
well
biotic, which
so
also
bio
emerged from
one, yes, to
previous
an
generation.
there, right? Previous generation, it was there. But it's not like the brand like not the fact that it's Ayurvedic that it commands a premium, which is interesting. Which also means that the investments, the way you can price your products, it's all very like commercially, like I said.
Premium nahi hai, mass
Ah,
market
it's
appeal.
a question.
You talked about the smell and the negative aspect. I was a jubilant doing drug discovery. I had some 500 odd scientists. And, with AI and the smart tech that is coming in, and I'm sure this is also happening in the perfumery industry, you can actually design the smell or the aroma. And it's already happening in the food industry. Certain types of food, which are, especially this, what is that Chinese thing which is banned in Singapore, that fruit, it smells and they banned it in hotels and all in Singapore and many other countries. What is that fruit? Jackfruit or what? I forget that fruit. So science is making even your olfactory senses smarter and making the product more acceptable. I'm sure if we modernize all this, even that whole sense of the smell and the taste or whatever the Ayurvedic, the negative connotations could also get merged into the beauty industry much faster with the benefits of it.
I mean, it is happening, but I think again we talk a little bit about inspired by Ayurveda or Ayurvedic. There's a difference,
Mm,
right? Forest Essential is not Ayurvedic per se. It's actually inspired by Ayurveda. If you look at the
correct.
back, it has a QS on fragrance, etc. Right? So I mean, it's not a purely Ayurvedic formulation. It has
Yeah.
preservatives. It's not a purely Ayurvedic formulation, right? And I think that's fine, and that makes sense commercially as well. If you talk about pure Ayurveda, then pure Ayurveda, of course, as per like if you follow the real sort of texts and the does not have space for anything that's synthetically created or that is and that's just a function of the time it was written in some sense, but that is the reality of where we are today.
Great. I would love to kind of just dissect a little bit in terms of how you see the product getting categorized. I'm told there is the skincare, which is the largest product category. Then you have the hair care, and then you have all the fragrance or playing to the senses category in the beauty industry. Where do you see the biggest opportunity in India?
So India has largely been a sabun tel country, right? Like that's been the bulk of all sales done. And recently you're sort of seeing tooth care kind of being added to that mix, and tooth care from a more aesthetic versus a more hygiene function, which is also interesting to see play out, right? So I mean, if I think about it, like teeth is also like a very high, like a very aesthetic part of who we are now, right? Which is interesting that this happened in the last 5, 10 years. It didn't happen before that. But I would say if I look forward, I mean, so skin, hair, eyes, lips, I think these will remain our most sort of focused on areas for, I think, just betting on, right? And most of our products today are kind of anyways betting in these areas, right? Going forward though, there's a whole piece around, like our body care, our foot care, our nail care, these are all sort of picking up in big ways and they will continue to pick up. But I think the mainstay will still be like, because we're rooted in that certain thing, I think hair and skin, that will be our big ones, right?
So skin ka patch, when will we get a skin patch that I can apply to say, okay, I've got a healthy skin or I got a oily skin, do this, do that. एक color code आ गया, patch लगाया, color code आया, non-invasive
There are
or
actually hydration meters, KK. So basically, there are these very gentle relight hydration meters that basically you can put on top of your skin or any area. Doesn't even touch your skin. Put it on top. It kind of measures your hydration and tells you what levels of hydration your skin has. So a lot of our beauty assistants, by the way, use it in stores or in pop up
I
because
know.
it's an aha moment for them, right? For the customer saying, "Oh, I'm at 70% hydration. I should be at 90%." So here is a water based cream that you can use on your face, for instance.
So it's happening.
It's happening. It's happening. It's not fully consumerized yet. When I say consumerized, it's in the hands of not in the hands of everyone, but it's happening.
Let's pick up about hair. In my daycare surgery, there were two parts of things that we used to do for cosmetic, either hair remover or hair transfer.
The grass is
जिसको
always greener on the other
who
side.
had hair on the wrong place wanted it to be removed, and who did not have hair at the right places wanted to be grafted. And I'm sure, there's a lot happening in terms of coloring of hair, metrosexually. I mean, I go to a salon and the guy wants, oh, yaar, I don't want it black. I want this Shah Rukh Khan type or whatever. And so now there are also, different shades of gray or different shades of brown or whatever. Even for men. I can't say about women because I have not stepped into women. Okay. Both sex parlors, but I do see a lot changing even in terms of the earlier, harsh chemicals now getting more refined, and the acceptability that it does less harm to your body or leads to leaching in the kidney and other things. How do you think the hair, as one of our, I would say, along with skin as an organ, need to be looked in from a beauty and wellness point of view?
No, so that's a great question, KK. And I think it goes back to like a few questions back where we were discussing about skin being the largest organ of the body, and therefore we're looking at skincare as almost like a nutraceutical. What you want to put on your skin should be something that you feel want to feel is safe enough to ingest, right? So I think that's something very similar which is happening now in hair care as well, right? So you're looking at just a big trend that obviously we've all seen, and honestly at Baby Chakra we were on the first to observe it actually, which was people read the labels. And it starts with mums, obviously, right? Because mums are very
Hmm.
particular about what's going on in the baby's body. So every time we do any sort of consumer, and we were doing a lot of co-creation at that point in time with Baby Chakra, and we'd go and we all spend so much time with mothers, right? And what we'd notice is whenever we'd introduce a new product to them, they'd actually just turn to see what's in the back, what ingredients are in there, right? But it's not like they knew what those ingredients meant. Like, so we call it the label literacy initiative that we launched then eventually, right? So basically, we had this whole program called Label Padho Moms, which was a call to action to mothers. Please read your labels before you decide to apply any products on yourself or your children. And number two, label literacy, which is here's a lexicon that this is what sodium disulfate does, or this is what phenoxyethanol does, right? And this is why you should not have it in your hand wash, in your baby's personal care products, in your diapers, wherever else, right? So that pattern, which of course we see play out in food in a big way, because we're seeing a lot of food evangelists in India now talking about the label literacy program. That is also,
Reminds me of my Gerber launch days in India.
there you go. Yeah. My KK, we have a lot more in common. Then yes, right? So that's what we're seeing play out in hair care now, right? Because people are understanding that the hair's keratin structure is extremely delicate. There's a shaft, there's a scalp, like they're understanding different rituals, what each one needs. We've gone beyond saying that, oh, tel lagakar shampoo karo, right? And condition karo. Like that's also a three-step approach. Took
Yeah.
us 2 decades to kind of build out too. If you remember, there was only tail and shampoo when we were growing up.
Marico built his business on that, no?
Correct. Exactly right. Right. There was hair on, there was shampoo. And even earlier, there was no shampoo. There was actually a soap bar that we would all use, right? Now, for
Life
that
boy.
transition, yeah. And after that to transition to saying, hair oil, shampoo, conditioner, leave in, serum. And then, you're moving on to other pieces now, which
Straighteners and
and
The
hairsprays. Yeah. One of the fastest growing consumer electronic products actually is hair care product.
Dyson,
Dyson. So I
40K,
think
50K.
there's definitely, I think, awareness happening on hair care, and hair care is now being seen at par with skincare in many cohorts.
I wanted to bring in a little bit more in terms of the science in hair care. Now, a lot of nanotechnologies are coming in product co-creation as well. Is this happening in India, or is just still the Western fad of using technology based products? It's obviously very expensive, but in the long run, I'm still black or maybe shades of gray, 58 years old, but I haven't bald yet. So maybe good genes, or I don't know what good products I've used in the past. But, genetically, it seems to arrest hair fall and stuff like that, especially in the US, where men bald in the 30s, whether it is because of hormonal change in them or whatever. But is this something beyond the reach of an average consumer here in India? The nanotechnology based product that are being designed for hair and skin as an extension.
No, but tell me more. So when you say, like, what are these products that you're referring
So there are certain, additives that are nano, which actually penetrate through the hair follicle and make
to?
it much more stronger or arrest the hair fall. These are some products that I've been seeing on the rise in the West, some parts of Asia where there is a hair problem also getting adopted. But they come at a price rather than having a cosmetic surgery to, graft the hair. It's much cheaper to even, arrest and live with it for a few more years before you eventually get into a surgical or an invasive procedure. So that's happening much more faster in the US and the Western world. Is this something that you see picking up in India? Because it's going to be an
Yes.
expensive product.
No, it is exactly. And I think it's not yet picked up at all
It's
because
premium, very ultra
very
premium.
premium, very premium. And I think, even to have something like this mainstream, not mainstream, but at least mainstream to a certain premium audience would require a lot of education and evangelism. So, like I said, I think we're at a different cast on hair care in India, right? And the trends that we are influenced by is largely on the mass premium side. So, whatever, for instance, right, there is this Korean beauty ritual on hair care, which is some 13-step, 14-step ritual, which analyzes your skin, your scalp health, and then customizes the whole, literally like an hour and a half process, right? Which is basically a hair wash and like oiling and massaging and then washing. But it claims to, like, it shows you like your scalp health and shows you the flakiness, the dryness, etc., and tells you that this is how it's been improved after this process. But that is a level, I think, that is like at where we are at today.
So it's more at a salon level.
It is more a salon, more at a care services level. At the derma level, it's still at the heart, hair transplant, the micro needling, those sort of procedures today.
Got it. Let's talk about the smell, olfactory, the perfume industry or the perfume segment. Obviously, I have a little bit of I do not know, some sort of an aversion to scent and perfume. So I'm happy with my own body odor and I don't make any other people, feel bad about me, but I do attract people with my body odor. I would say that's my natural fragrance. That's working for me so far. But, there's a lot of new science that has come in terms of the smell, what attract a certain individual for his body type, and there's no aversion to that smell. That comes in from the biochemistry, which is now, with artificial intelligence, has now been able to create different grades of smell and smell sensory perception. In India, we are still struggling with counterfeit. I'll send my whatever foreign Christian Dior ka bottle. He'll give me 50 bucks. Koi dusra bhar ke he sells in our office. I don't have the packaging bottle hai original. So we are still struggling with, original product. Can this be the next growth engine for the fragrance industry in India?
I mean, I think fragrance is really burgeoning. I think it's a great market to enter, and we're already seeing certain D2C brands cross 350 to 500 crores in top line, right, on just the
Yeah.
back of fragrance alone. And some of these may also not have like purely original fragrances or breakthrough fragrances. They might actually have a cheaper version of a popular fragrance. Like you correctly said, it's not a counterfeit, it's a interpretation, a reinterpretation. So I think the reason fragrance is becoming so big is again that evolutionary journey we've all gone through as customers and consumers, right, KK? I mean, if you remember fog,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Right. So
अभी
I
भी
mean,
आता है ना IPL and cricket के साथ.
correct, correct. So, Winnie Cosmetics, like, I mean, that was actually one of the breakthroughs in men's grooming, right? Because suddenly they made men ashamed if they didn't smell a certain way or if they didn't smell good. So I think men are interestingly enough driving a lot of the fragrance purchases going forward. And in fact, a lot of the D2C companies I meet now who are looking at the male space, big advice I give them is please look at fragrances because it's still an opportunity to tackle there. There's also an opportunity, in terms of like right now, not too many Indians have taken on to roll on deodorants. It's a very big phenomenon in the West. But in India, it's largely spray and pray, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of this is the mistrust of applying something to, your
The skin.
underarms or yeah, to the skin, where you're not sure if it's supposed to like mask a certain odor. So you just think it's a little bit not safe for you. There's all these myths that keep on getting circulated around and causing breast cancer or, all these
Hmm.
stories. So I think there's an opportunity also to create a sort of hygiene slash fragrance range, which is, and I need to separate the two, right? Because fragrance is more for the parties, the social events, the going to college, while hygiene is more like just to maintain basic body odor and to smell okay. I think there's an opportunity to think about really creating a breakthrough range of, first of all, perfumes and fragrances inspired by Indian aesthetics, right? There is an Oud killer, right?
The Arabs use it a lot.
Yeah,
And it's
there's a
very expensive, more expensive than the biggest of the biggest brands, premium of the most premium fragrance. Some
correct,
of
but
them.
yes, but I mean, there's also jasmine. There's a lot of like Indian fragrances waiting to be explored and waiting to be brought to commercialization, which I think is one opportunity. And number two, like in terms of really creating safe perfumes, everything is today alcohol based. Your deodorant sticks are based on certain chemical compositions, right? How do
Correct.
you make them take them to the natural paradigm? That, by the way, is a very big opportunity as well to still untap.
I want to now pick up some counter trends to the industry, especially that's picking up post COVID. One is people want to go less chemical, or maybe I would say vegan cosmetic. Second one is more about green and green ingredients or eco friendly ingredients as well, and eco friendly packaging or recycling of material about packaging. How do you see this counter trends actually shaping the industry in the future? We're seeing a lot in the wellness industry per se, but is this something that will catch up, or it's just a certain cohort of people, especially the youngsters, who are more concerned about these counter trends and want to defy the norm? Where do you see this movement?
So, I'll talk a little bit on the sustainability aspect first, right? So,
Yeah.
there's sustainability across the spectrum, right? There's sustainability of formulation. So, are the formulations you're using biodegradable after they use, right? There's sustainability of packaging, sustainability of the production process, sustainability of the way, like an ESG process and how you treat your teams. Like, there's a lot of, I think, overall, like a narrative on sustainability that we see a lot of companies today talk about, big and small, both. The learning there is that actually makes for extremely compelling, not just content around the brand and resonance to the brand mission and a feeling of okay, that brand kind of cutting through the clutter when you hear the stories of how the ingredients have been sustainably procured from this farming community in XYZ area, right? There's this whole story and narrative that plays out there, but it actually is something that impacts choices. So we're seeing the younger generation, again it's a specific cohort, but I'm talking about the generation that's on Instagram, that's making choices based on social media, that actually makes these choices and chooses products actively because they have a sustainability certification or they have a sustainable narrative to them, which is really interesting. There's, of course, a large cohort that would say that if it's sustainable, that's great. I would actively choose that, but not at the cost of paying more money. So that I think is really where like the mass of India lies, right? So they're happy to buy something. So if you see like product X and product Y, product X being sustainable and same price point, they would actually choose product X.
Okay.
But if it's
All
product X,
things being equal,
all things being equal, we would choose something more
sustainable.
sustainable. So that is the other piece we see play out. So I think the whole drive on sustainability is today to how do you use sustainability in a way that brings down your costs of production to make it at par with the other competition in the market and maybe at best a 5-10% premium. So that I think is the way sustainability is playing.
I want to bring up another counter trend, China bashing. You see, although China is growing as a cosmetic market, people globally, the industry bets on China. But what comes out of China, the fake and first copy, second copy, is very dangerous. And in fact, BSI or one of the labs actually removed a report with a high lead
Yeah.
content, cadmium content, which leads to cancers, organ failures. But the teenage, it's so cheap and it's been pushed around the world, including India, that they don't mind taking a risk on such cosmetic and beauty product. But we have seen kidney failures in youngsters as a use of such products. Do you think we need to do something as an industry, or this is a counter trend that China will shut shop eventually, like a lot of things are going out of China. How do we prevent all this happening in India? Because we see this in the healthcare industry, some of the impacts of the end use of such products, cheap products or counterfeits that come out of China. How do you see this happening? I'm sure BabyChakra, you are doing that education, but there's not much on the China, and Amazon is pushing a lot of their products here. Earlier it used to be Alibaba and Co. But still you find those in Amazon. How do you see this counter trend of China bashing or blocking China out for such products?
So, I'm actually someone who believes in an open economy, honestly, KK. That's my worldview. But at the same time, not at the cost of miseducation and harming our population, right? Like how we sort of saw a sort of protectionist regime with toys in India,
Correct.
right, coming from China, and very stringent regulation to that effect. So much so now the toy industry in India for India has completely burgeoned, right? It's completely now taken on a
Correct.
life of its own. And there's a lot more people who are now investing in STEM, like Indian entrepreneurs building out STEM, building out STEM toys, building out wooden toys, building out, like toys across. And that's completely now become an Indian phenomenon. Miles to go, but still nonetheless, good roots there. I mean, there might be an opportunity there as well for the beauty and personal care space. I think the tricky thing is it's not like many of these China companies are coming to India and setting up shop with their Chinese fronts, right? What is happening is that there are a lot of Indian entrepreneurs who are going and opportunistically procuring these products from China and then almost like traders selling them in India. So I think that is the piece that we need to think about, right? So I don't think it's a comment on China versus India. I think it's a comment more on what is being sold in the industry, whether it's safe for our population, right? Regardless of where it comes from, whether it's safe for our population, and therefore then really setting some stringent norms and standards around what can be sold in the name of skincare or hair care or color cosmetics.
Naya, it still bypasses our new cosmetic bill that was passed
Yeah.
around a year back because it is coming through, I do not know what route, online route through Amazon or whatever. It says made in China or made in Vietnam, but it is still coming on to the homes or the streets or the shop in India. How do we prevent that? Because there's a huge healthcare cost for the end consumer, which the consumer has to bear just because he or she has consumed such product. And we are seeing that impact on the ground.
No, I think it's extremely important, KK, which is why I don't want to at all like minimize this point. I think the broader point is that, in fact, I'm saying that it's such a pressing problem. It needs a larger solve than just banning one country. That's my broader point, right? So, for instance, what you see in food, even companies that manufacture food in India, Indian companies or multinationals manufacturing food in India, or even QSR restaurants serving coffee or tea or whatever else, like fast food in India, there has now been a citizen awareness which has now demanded them to change the composition of everything ranging from formula to the amount of sugar in coffee to the fat content in like or the palm oil content in your packaged product, right? And it's not just saying that, oh, this only if it comes from China it should be regulated, right? I think that's exactly where I'm heading even with this particular piece. Whatever is being sold in India one way or the other through any platform, it needs to meet certain criteria on safety, on skin compatibility, on lead, mercury, like all of these basic ingredient content
Yeah,
that
which are very dangerous
which
and they
should be
don't get out
allowed.
of your body over
Correct.
years. That poisoning
Exactly.
is, it cripples you up.
Correct. So I think that is really where I'm going with this, versus saying that it's only like a country versus one country, right? It could be in from anywhere. It could also be manufactured in India. But I think it's a broader point I wanted to make on this.
I wanted to talk about beauty tech, the holy grail of all the big brands and big beauty companies betting on. So I wanted to understand there are a lot of Gen Z influencers that have emerged on social media. So, and they're very vocal about their likes, dislikes. Like you talked about teenage, there are a lot of different Gen Z, different, folks for different stroke that have emerged. And there are also influencers, these also for older generations like us who have become influencers on, Insta, Pele to TikTok, TikTok that's been banned about what beauty is. But when I kind of do a little bit of digging deeper, there's a lot of falsehood. How do you see fact checking of such influencers? Although now there is a new act and there is a lot of new things in the works, but they could harm your products and your brand as well. Like one fine day, Deepika went to the university in Delhi with the protesters over there, and over here, Hindustan Lever had a fire on their brands that she was endorsing. I realized what sort of fire it was raging at Hindustan Lever and many other companies where she would have been endorsing as a brand endorser. How do you think acts of these sort of influencers impact or adversely impact the beauty industry?
There are two pieces, and if I may unpack, right, KK. One is this whole piece around misinformation, right? And, because that person is an influencer or a celebrity, right, you tend to just listen, if not believe.
Correct.
And, there are lots of, by the way, Twitter handles like the liver doctor, for instance, who kind of calls out a lot of influencers who talk about, what to ingest for glowing skin and says, like, what do you offer heart disease also? Like, I mean, by the way, it's not just about skin and hair care and beauty, it's also about health. Everybody is an influence on healthcare with no qualifications whatsoever for the most part, right? So I think it's an endemic problem, not just relegated to one industry. Look at fintech influencers. What's happening there?
Oh yeah,
Everybody is a fintech influencer.
stock broker बन गए अब तो.
Everybody is like,
Stock recommendation at
Yes, yes.
999 or
Correct.
499.
I mean, it's scary because I mean, there's a whole generation of youth who are now losing money and taking on loans to finance their F&O behavior, and they're losing massive money in the process, right? So this whole piece around like that's a dark side of, I would say, influencer marketing. So it's not just relegated to one industry; it's something we see across. And of course, there are many positives to, goes without saying, to influencer marketing, which is where that's why the industry even exists. But this is certainly something that needs to be thought through and regulated in some way. Now, the second piece is around just the fake news, because there's a university on WhatsApp, there's a university on Instagram, there's a university on TikTok, and that's not again relegated to India. It's actually all over the world, right?
Right.
So even if you listen to the chat on social media, on TikTok, dermatologists will be constantly telling people, please do not follow this TikTok influencer for the advice she's giving you on you cannot use mouthwash on your acne scars. Please don't do that. You will burn your skin. Like these are the kind of things that are being peddled. So I think this whole piece, right? One is on not being credential enough to like give information, but still giving information, and having large followership and audience to listen in and impact behaviors and outcomes. And number two, on like the fake news in terms of like just giving out completely false information, and or your name being used thanks to now deep fakes to create a certain set of information which never could have been attributed to you because you never said it, but someone else used your face, your
Correct.
voice, or to kind of spread that news out. Are not easy problems to solve. I think again it goes back to saying that this is really the need of the hour, where what we have done with food, what we're trying to do with healthcare, what we try to do in the past with mom and baby, right? Can we do the same with skincare, with our choices around what we put on our bodies, and really educating people that the skin is the largest organ of your body. Whatever you put, it absorbs, it stores. So how do you make more informed choices on what you decide to do or what you decide to ingest as well? So I think it's a broader narrative, honestly, KK. Not that can be, again, not one person responsible. It's just the ecosystem we are all in today.
I want to now move on to another aspect of beauty tech. You see, some agency in Spain created a full blown personality and a person on Insta, and now I guess full lifestyle, everything, beauty, sab kuch. So I'm just wondering now, when will India be having its first AI Miss India contest, and then maybe Miss World and then Miss Universe of all these sort of avatars and individuals which are in the virtual world, and maybe perhaps the beauty industry can also gain from it.
So there's already an AI influencer, right? One of the Indian companies has created an AI
हाँ,
influencer.
वो तो बहुत सारे हैं,
Yeah.
फिनटेक
So
में भी आगे हैं.
so I think that's there. I think the broader thought here, and I think the opportunity here, in how in manufacturing we have digital twins.
Correct.
Even in healthcare, we have digital twins
Correct.
where you're able to create sort of and completely create a second persona of
Virtual world,
yourself. Yeah, but a persona of yourself where you kind of also say that if you go proceed with this course of treatment, what could be the impact on certain vitals and certain health outcomes, right? Based on all the data that your body is already given to this algorithm. Now, I think there's an opportunity again in beauty to create a digital twin from an outcomes and an intervention perspective, because not just for the aesthetic of it, like what does it look like after it's done, but equally more so for the impact it has on your overall physiology. So I think that is really where it would get exciting from an AI perspective. The second is, by the way, and I was chatting about it with couple of friends who, we've been doing a bunch of this understanding of the generative AI space. A lot of our AI models today are based on existing data sets of largely Western skin and, hair care conditions, etc. In fact, it's also largely, even within that, focused on Caucasian skin, and again within that largely male, right? So there is a whole narrative on how do we create more and more, first of all, data set on Indian skin health, hair, whatever, different sort of, and creating those data sets so we can train those data sets better to be more relevant to our audience and to our country. And if we can't get enough critical mass of data, is there an opportunity for us to create synthetic data at scale? So I
Correct.
think because AI also, by the way, has a lot of bias in it, I've actually written a LinkedIn post on this, KK, and I call it bias immortality.
Hmm.
Because if you,
Interesting.
yeah, no, because the reason I coined that term was because if you keep on building your bet on future blockbuster drugs and interventions based on data sets and what has worked in the past, you're going to continue building for a certain population because that's the data set you're building it off of and your predictions off of, right? So I think these are the pieces going forward, right? One is this whole piece on how do you get in more data on Indian skin, Indian hair, Indian physiology, Indian
Yeah, but
healthcare,
the
and also right?
upside for India is that all the genomes, 80% of them are there in India globally, whether it's Dravidian, Caucasian, whatever, Aryan, whatever race. So it becomes very diverse, and India could be a next growth avenue for very hyper personalized product creation. That's where
100%.
I was coming, where the wellness industry and the cosmetic and the beauty industry can actually work together to create and test out products, just not for the Indian consumer, but for the global
For the
consumer
world.
at large.
For the world.
Yeah,
Literally for the world. No, I absolutely agree. And I think, but again, for that, we have such unstructured data and it's not
yeah,
even digital. So what do you
I
feed
know.
it? Right, KK? So we've been talking for the longest time of like a national health record and national health. Like we don't have any of those
कुछ नहीं होने
platforms.
वाला है next 5 years
Hopefully it
also.
happen. Now we're talking about like a universal health platform and with a lot of digitization. And after I think what we've seen with digital public infrastructure, I'm very bullish on PPP is working out. But it takes time. So that's why I think there's a big bet that we're all making on synthetic data sets, which are based off, which can scale really quickly, and which, hopefully we can create with at least a cognition of bias, because nothing can be created without a lack of bias, but with a cognition of bias.
I want to bring up out one other issue of tech-based beauty service providers. I don't want to take name, but they come to your home,
Ah,
they deliver whatever services around beauty. But there is a lot of variance, personalization. There is hyper unstandardization. And that brings up a challenge to how do you train such large workforce to deliver these sort of beauty and cosmetic services at your home at scale. And obviously it brings to my mind, one of the companies that I have invested and guided, which is into AR VR. And you see, in healthcare, either you train doctors and nurses on a dead body, which is cadaver, or on a mannequin, which costs a mannequin with all the case and whatever costs $1 million plus, or you use AR VR tools. And that sort of virtual try on and training has been done in the healthcare and industry. Why is this not coming in so quickly with the beauty and salons and all, so that with the attrition you also are able to standardize and bring better services and delivery of those products and services to the end consumer at the last mile?
So, KK, I actually think there's a bit of a mixed feedback on the quality of the consistency in the quality of services, because from the companies that I've seen, not all, but the
I don't
larger
want to
ones,
take names
yeah, but
though.
the larger ones, there's actually some pretty strong retention rates on beauty in particular, which means
Yeah.
something is going well.
Yeah.
Something is going well. But
Place value is there. That's why you're calling them.
yeah, exactly. And I think there
Time and
is a
place
certain
value is there. That's why you're calling them home and getting it delivered.
yeah, and correct. And I think that's so there's also a delta of experience, right, which is convenience to come at home and do administer what you need. And number two, basic training, because a lot of people in the beauty industry don't even have that basic training that at least these large platforms have been able to create, right? Through a lot of skilling programs that they do. So I think we've done a very good job given the circumstances, by the way, just putting it out there, right? I think though the opportunity now going forward lies on two fronts, where you can use technology and AI in particular at scale. One is in actually the hiring process, right? Services at scale need a certain mindset and a certain attitude and a certain filtering when you hire for people, because even if you hire the wrong cohort, however much you skill them, it's going to be a disaster still, right? So it's a service industry. It's a very, very high touch industry. And that's where I think AI sort of selection processes can play a really good job, because otherwise the human intervention creates a backlog of applications, and like it's much slower process, right? And then the whole learning is not accelerated in terms of what kind of people to pick and pass through to the next level versus filter out. So there is already, I mean, a lot of AI hiring tools and techniques that are being leveraged in the industry still to scale, but nonetheless happening in retail, for instance, can also be applied to these services, beauty services. The second one, like you very correctly point out, is in in the real training itself. And there I think there's an opportunity to first of all monitor the quality of outcome when you're administering when you're administering a beauty treatment, which is where you using sort of an AI VR model, or figuring out like some basic data points. You actually say that this is the outcome, or this is where we were with the client before we started the process, this is where we are after. So it provides a proof point not just to the client but equally to the people who are managing the back end functions, to say that the person really delivered on a high quality service, right? So I think there's a quality of outcomes piece that can be leveraged. And in skilling in particular, I feel that, to your point, what you said, which is, like in healthcare, using a lot of AR, VR techniques to understand this is like how the procedure needs to flow through. Again, I think there's obviously a digital twin model that can be played out here. That said, I mean, like, how do you really mimic like doing a massage? I mean, in there, maybe in a very, in a future, 5, 7 years from now, you have a humanoid robot who you're, you're kind of training differently, or you're applying the massage on and you're seeing like what is the impact on the nerve, like on the dopamine hit or the nervous system as a result of your activities. But that will take a little bit of time to see through.
My last question before I come on a rapid fire with you. Which sensory side of beauty you believe, which sense of the five senses you believe beauty influences the most?
When you say beauty influences the most, what do you mean?
Meaning, is it the visual part, the smell part, the touch part, your five senses, or the taste?
I mean,
Which
it's
is it?
visual, right? Beauty
Huh?
is largely visual.
So
Beauty
it's
is
more visual only, or where do you think the industry tries to influence? Which sensory part of the consumer the beauty
no,
industry tries to influence a lot?
at the heart of it, KK, beauty is a dopamine hit.
Okay.
At the heart of it. Why? Because if you're able to create an experience with a beauty product or a beauty service, or with a beauty, any accessory also, which gives the person who's wearing it a feeling of joy, right? Then that's success. So it is essentially a dopamine hit. When I
Got it.
look, yeah, so I think
Gratification there.
so it's how, what's that?
I said gratification over there in the
Gratification
brain.
over there, and there's a big recognition, and everybody now talks about it, that if you don't feel confident, right, then you could be however beautiful, I mean, in the more sort of objective, like, the golden, ratio perspective, but you will not come across as beautiful to the world and to yourself. So I think it's a dopamine hit, the feeling of confidence, the feeling of I've got it. I think that beauty really impacts most.
So your last part of the about dopamine hit gives me a lot of directions around where the convergence of the wellness and the beauty industry may really work. You see, the wellness industry also gives that sensory dopamine high, along with the reducing of the cortisols and a sense of well-being. And I guess that's where the convergence would be the best way to move the future of smarter beauty. Let me very quickly do a rapid fire with you. First,
My
a little bit
cortisol
about
levels
the.
are now through the roof.
It's going to be fun.
Yes, please.
Should we now move from lipstick index to beauty tech index?
Yes, why not? I think it's about time we do as well. And you already see it play out a little bit, right? In terms of, we mentioned, right? Just in basic things like even consumer hair appliances and things, right? So I think you're already sort of seeing that play out, not even to mention like your high tech, AI generative model, skincare, skin assessment models, is basic things. You're seeing the transition already happen.
Great. If Paris is the beauty capital of the world, what would be the beauty capital of India then?
Mumbai, you
Bombay,
have good,
not
yes, you
Bangalore?
have, no, I'll tell you why. You have Good Glam, you have Purple, you have
Oh, yeah,
Nykaa,
yeah.
you have Sugar, you
Oh, yeah.
have Rico, you have Godrej, you have Unilever centered here in India. Like, what more do you need? Everybody's here.
So, bus, I'll get all the techies from Bangalore here.
उनको तो आना चाहिए. Anyways, I'm part of team. The Tech Entrepreneurs Association of Mumbai. यही चल रहा है. That's what we're trying to do here.
Great. Nice answer. If beauty was a celebrity, who will it be?
It would actually be you, like you yourself. Like everybody thinks they're a celebrity in their own world.
So, beauty should be embodying you then.
Yes, it should be embodying. I mean, like for us, it is what beauty does is it in our heads, it makes us have more of a right to be a celebrity and be the main character in our own life.
Why are celebrities acquiring these beauty brands? Abroad, there are there. And I know some celebrities here also have invested or have a stake in beauty brands. Is entertainment their core business or beauty is their core business?
They're in the business of aspiration, no? And dreams.
Okay.
So like we discuss how wellness and beauty meet with a dopamine hit. Bollywood and celebrities meet beauty with the aspiration business.
So would it be
So
convergence? There is a
that's
convergence of making money beyond
one
the
but also
entertainment.
aspiration.
Acha.
Self-aspiration, having the audience who already looks at them and has an aspiration based on what they are using who they are. So that's really where the convergence is. Now, not everything obviously will be successful also, KK. It's really where beauty, authentic, like whatever the product is or the proposition, the mission of the brand is, authentically meets the brand of the celebrity. That's really where the convergence and truly happens successful.
Great. We have one celebrity who has a wellness business as well, and who also has a beauty business. Dono hai. I think he's well prepared for the convergence. Do you know the name?
Beauty and wellness, dono. Can't place. Who would this be?
Ritik.
Ah,
जिम विम भी है उसका ब्रांड भी है.
Ritik
He's
has
well
beauty.
prepared for it.
What is Ritik's beauty brand? I can't place it.
He has got his own brand of wearables, men's cosmetics, whatnot,
Can't remember somehow. That's interesting.
and he's got his own gym. Right. Something personal I want to ask. Being a mother, you went through the baby chakra and now the glam. Which was the stint you have enjoyed the most?
I've enjoyed both, to be honest, KK. I think BabyChakra was very different. It was my first venture. We were and we remain a very, very mission-oriented team. And the conversations there were very different from what I see now, of course, with Good Glam, right? So the
Yeah.
conversations there were centered around health outcomes, around healthcare journeys, around predictions on how to segregate specific sort of almost like not patient types, but sort of outcomes types in different cohorts to ensure that you were able to connect with the right doctors in the right way. Very, very different journey. I think with Good Glam, we're seeing a lot more now chatter on, of course, multiple product brands. We're seeing a lot of chatter on, beauty and color cosmetics, and like it's very different. So both have been beautiful experiences. I mean, I'm very, very blessed to have had both.
Who's your beauty influencer and icon?
Oh, I mean, again, I don't really have a beauty influencer or an icon per se. I genuinely don't.
You don't
Again,
follow anyone?
I don't fall. I see what people are doing out of curiosity. Do they
Okay.
influence me? They influence me in certain ways, but it's not like, oh, this is the one person who influences me, like it's not like that.
Got
I
it.
wish it were. It would make my life much easier.
Naiyya, where do you see this whole beauty industry in India now in next 5 years? Are we going to be more smarter? Are we going to be getting more tech oriented, or are we going to get more dumber?
No, there's no question of us getting dumber. We are the third largest market in beauty in the world, and we're growing the fastest.
I know.
Right. So there is no question of us getting dumber. In fact, we'll have to be even more agile and even more innovative to have the right to win the customer's wallet share, right? And to also retain the right to stay a customer's preference and brand of choice. So we'll have to keep on getting smarter and more innovative. So yeah, I think we'll keep on growing. I do see, however, that the beauty space is becoming a little bit cluttered. So I
It
think in
is.
future we will see a little bit more like a weeding out, if you will, of brands that were not able to establish product market fit at scale, and that replaced by a lot of consolidation for sure still. And I think a lot of innovation and innovative brands come up that truly understand that whole hyper personalization, creating the full care protocol, and also, by the way, appealing to new cohorts of people. So for instance, if you look at the more mature audience, where is a product that they need, right? If you're looking at 60, 65 plus, this generation is extremely not focused on longevity as they're focused on lifespan. So they, how healthy, how fit, how active, how joyful they are. So they will start needing products now which are very tailored to the thin skin that they have, the frail hair, but keeping them vibrant and having them play the best that they can in that paradigm. So a lot of new
Geriatric cosmetics would be the next big thing after 2047.
I think before 2047.
Okay, great. It's a pleasure talking to you. We could have gone on this subject, but offline, I will love to catch up with you and talk a lot of stuff that we have been doing. Right from an investment that is doing skin grafting on burns by spraying the skin, not actually physically. So there is a lot of innovation happening, maybe at scale, and in a few years from now, from clinically testing thing, we could probably take a celebrity skin and maybe spray it on somebody who wants to look like that celebrity's skin as well. That's the frontier that we've been talking about, smart beauty and tech, or the science is converging as well. The startup is in an early stage. It's already got its clinical validation for certain health conditions around the skin. But that's where the science is now actually moving. So
Very interesting.
yeah, that's where we see in next 5 years, India could be a frontier for the beauty tech. And I guess the beauty tech capital of the world is going to be Bombay.
Yes, it will be 100%.
Lovely talking to you, Naiyya, and thank you so much. I know you've been busy traveling, taking care of the kid and the babies as well, and then managing the business. But it's real pleasure talking to you, getting some real great insights into the industry, which probably I didn't have at this point in time, but there are key takeaways for us and many entrepreneurs who would love to look from this side of the business to the beauty and fashion industry as well. And I wish you all the very best. Look forward to catching up with you. And on behalf of my team, which has put together all the material content and done the research and put this whole manifesto, it's a great beginning for us. We'll keep coming back and evaluating how the industry is shaped up and moved in future in the next 5 years as well. Thanks once again.
No, it has been my absolute pleasure. I mean, I've clearly enjoyed this conversation. We've obviously like also overstepped on time because we've enjoyed talking to each other so much and also enjoyed hearing your thoughts. Your team has done a fantastic job researching as well. So please thank them from my end. But thank you for having me.
Lovely.
Sounds good. All
Bye
right.
bye.
Bye bye.